So I've sold AI at over 100 businesses. Here's literally everything I know about selling AI on a whiteboard. The first is, if you really want to crush it in this space, you need to focus on results over process. Results are the things that your systems deliver. Process is how your system delivers it. In reality, unfortunately, very few people care about the latter. The vast majority of people care about the former. So clients in reality don't care about the underlying mechanisms of your automations. They don't care about your coding practices. They don't care about your implementation details. They don't care that your system covers all edge cases. They don't care that your system was made in Rust or Golang or N8N or Make.com. What they care about is they care about whether it delivers results. So if you can start focusing on the deliverables or the outputs of your system, aka my system saves you this time or makes you this money, and ignore the technical implementation details, unless when they're explicitly requested by a client, which will occur sometimes, but very, very rarely, you're going to win because you're going to speak the same language that clients expect. Okay. And this is one of the major mistakes that I see when I'm coaching people in my communities. We tend to over-explain the technical details as AI automation developers and how it works because that's all that we really deal with. That's most of our job, if you think about it. It's natural that then we focus on that. But clients don't see what goes on inside of the system. To clients, your system, the one that you deliver for them, painstakingly sweat and bleed, is just a black box. And what it does is it takes in some money and then it produces a lot more money. Okay. This is all that clients see from the outside in. So they don't actually want to look inside of the inner workings of said box. They don't actually want to peel back the curtain and check out your cool cloud-hosted serverless N8N automations. What they care about is the input and then ultimately the output. They care about things like how fast you can convert input into output. They care about things like how big of a multiple you produce here. Is it like a 3x ROI? Is it like a 5x ROI? They care about how easy it is for them to put things into the system or take things out. They don't care about what actually goes on inside of the system. And if you guys can understand this earlier rather than later, you'll save yourself a ton of headaches. So when you shift from explaining technical architecture, which some clients are going to tangentially care about, but the vast majority don't actually give a shit for, to focusing exclusively on business outcomes, what sort of return on investment you're going to generate, how much money you're going to save them, how much chaos in their business you're going to reduce, how many people you'll be able to lay off. Your close rates, that is the percentage of people that, let's say you jump on a sales call with and then convert into paying clients, is going to skyrocket. And so will your average order value. And that just is a little acronym here for the average amount of money that you make off a client on their first order. Okay, so if you get these, you're going to be way better off. Most successful client presentations follow a very simple pattern. So focus on showing them what information they need to know. There's going to be some essentials, things like, hey, here's how you're going to log into the system. Here's how you're going to adjust the data and so on and so forth. And then focus the vast majority of your presentations on what clients are going to receive results-wise, then the estimated timeline and cost. Remember, this up here, this is just tangential to the end result. What clients actually care about are, ultimately the results and then what they have to do in order to get it done. Additionally, many automation agencies always feel compelled to justify fees, and the way that they do so is they try and over-complexify things. Clients don't actually want that. Clients are actually willing to pay you way more money for a simple explanation versus a complex one, as long as your simple explanation is basically, hey, you pay me X dollars and I will pay you, Y dollars. Okay, so just focus on this equation. This is what people care about. People don't care about fancy over-engineered terms. They don't care about big fancy acronyms. They don't care about big fancy automations. What they care about is the universal language that all business owners speak: money, dollar signs, return on investment. So here's some quick insights on client psychology that I've gleaned in probably over 500 sales calls now. The vast majority of clients are concerned with risk reduction. They don't care about innovation. So you're going to want to avoid terms like revolutionize, disrupt, game-changing. Clients don't care about that. Clients care about, hey, I'm going to deliver you a measurable 3 times ROI on the money you spend with me. Another big thing is that decision makers typically fear looking incompetent when they don't understand technical details. This is sort of an ego thing, but hey, a lot of people get into business for ego reasons. So if you can just avoid the technical details and keep things simple and easy to understand, people are just going to like you a lot more by proxy. If you have concrete examples of past success, that'll vastly outweigh your super complex theoretical explanations or super poetic direct sales letter every time. So just front load actual results that you've delivered either in that person's vertical or similar systems that you delivered for people in other verticals. And then ultimately, we focus on reliable execution here over cutting edge technology. What's a good example of what I mean here? Up until quite recently, most N8N agents looked really sexy, but they did very, very little. And instead, people preferred simple linear automations. I think as N8N agents tend to everything's improving over time with the strength of these models. I think as things improve with the strength of models, eventually end-to-end agents and similar formalizations are going to be fine. But for now, simple straight line automations that take a process that's producing like a 2x or a 3x ROI and turning it into a process that produces a 10x ROI. That's what business executives actually care about, and that's what they're willing to invest in. Okay, so here's a simple SOP, that stands for standard operating procedure, that you guys could use next time you're faced with this sort of situation. Step 1 is to identify the client's business problem. Once you've identified the client's business problem, and by the way, this is going to take something like 70% of your conversation, focus on the inputs that you're going to need from the client. Create a simple explanation of how the system's going to work, focusing on their inputs, not on what goes on inside of that scary black box. Then demonstrate concrete outputs or results, social proof. Then provide clear timeline and very clear pricing. Focus on simplifying the price wherever possible. And then close your deal based on outcomes and not on implementation. Here's a really quick and easy hack that should get you guys in the right mindset of this. Most people, when they write cool things they've done, case studies, awesome accomplishments, past experiences, they'll do something like this. I built an automated CRM for a B2B company that produced them $10,000 a month in savings. This may seem like a pretty good case study, but it's not. You know why? Because you spend the vast majority of this case study focusing on the implementation details. What you did, okay? I built an automated CRM, and then who you did it for a B2B company. The only part that clients actually care about, sucks for me to say, or the vast majority of their care is going to be the $10,000 a month in savings. So if you want a quick and easy hack that should just that you guys can use to reorient your focus and your priorities, here's a representative example. Instead of I built an automated CRM for a B2B company that produced them $10,000 a month in savings, you say I saved $10,000 a month for a B2B company through an automated CRM. Do you guys see how we're now rearranging everything here? The thing that matters is the first and most important thing that we front load. Okay, and then everything else here, we backfill. Backfill just means stick at the end. So if you guys want a quick and easy, I don't know if this is called a mnemonic or just like a way of thinking, think about this. Think about when you explain something to a client, start with the results. Worry about the implementation later. They'll thank you for it. Okay, another big shift that significantly improved both my monthly revenue and my peace of mind was going from service provider to a partner. All right, so the second major revelation here was when I discovered that clients don't actually want blueprints, they don't want tools, and they don't want systems. What they want are ongoing, what's called containerized service. And containerized service is, as you guys can guess, something that involves a container, which is basically that black box that I talked about earlier, that just delivers consistent outcomes that I manage fully. So I actually have full responsibility and full ownership of said system, and I take ownership of the inputs and the outputs. The second that I got into this mindset, I started printing. Okay, like when I started, I focused on delivering these simple one-off automation projects. The benefit of one-off automation projects is obviously they're easier to get if you are a total noob. But the downside is every time that you deliver one, okay, the next month, your revenue just hits zero again. And so if I could just graph, revenue over time, basically, I'd make a lot of money month 1, but then month 2, I'd make less. Month 3, maybe I'd make more. Month 4, I'd kind of middle. And I wouldn't really be able to consistently grow my business. Now, instead, I pivoted to focusing on becoming a partner of a business, aligning long-term incentives and pitching myself as a retainer where I provided a consistent recurring service. And when I did this, I found that month to month, I may not have had massive spikes like I did before, but I still had minor spikes. And because I was focusing on recurring revenue and partnerships, I ended up growing over time significantly more than before when I was always sort of like yo-yoing around. So when you do one-off projects and stuff like that, you typically get unpredictable revenue streams, and that's simply by nature of the thing that you're selling. The real leverage in automation is when you go retainer-based, subscription-based, you basically have some sort of MRR. So I basically shifted from I will build you this automation to I'm going to generate you these results every single month. And this improved my client retention, and it also improved my peace of mind. This actually required a complete and utter rewrite of my whole business model. Previously, I was charging for the time spent building. So I cared a lot about, what am I putting into this project? I want to make sure I'm being compensated commensurately with what I am delivering. In reality, clients don't care about that. What they care about is what they're getting out of the project. And that's what you should be charging for. If you deliver a client $10,000 a month in value on a recurring basis, you can charge them $3,000-ish a month in order to deliver those services. And even if you build a system that does it all completely autonomously, here's a quick hack. clients will continue paying you that $3,000 a month so long as your system provides value because they just don't want to have to deal with it. It's working, right? They don't want to touch something. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They don't want to have to readjust something if it's already producing them consistent ROI. So instead of me doing, charging for the time spent building, I started pivoting. I started charging monthly retainers for the ongoing value delivered instead. I then started taking complete and utter ownership of outcomes, which just meant clients no longer needed to really get the technology themselves. All they did is, I gave them a ping every couple of days. I gave them little progress updates and how things were going. I let them know every time that I delivered some sort of result that they were interested in. We're talking revenue here. We're talking savings. And then, me and my team handled everything else. Now, I say team loosely here. I had a VA, but, as you scale up an agency, obviously, if you guys want to scale your team and whatnot, teams a lot of the time scare people. People think, oh no, if I'm getting a team to deliver my project, clients won't like that. Well, actually, when you get in the habit of delivering results as opposed to charging based off of the time that you are physically spending working, clients like that because a team just implies that you can scale up what is working right now significantly more than if you were alone. Okay? So here's some essentials for my retention strategy. Proactive system improvements demonstrate an ongoing commitment to results, and not just my results, but client results. A lot of people talk about never doing work for free. It's usually some big dick tech bro that's like, I never work for free, man. People are always paying me or I'm not giving them anything. I understand that mindset. And there's definitely instances where if you work for free, you get taken advantage. But I've always thought that this was sort of silly because every time that I have personally given anything to people proactively ahead of time without asking, hey, can you pay for this thing? I mean, a couple things. Usually they end up paying me anyway because they feel this immense sense of reciprocity and they're so overwhelmed with the value that I provide them. But two, it just makes for a much better working relationship. And it shifts me from being just like that builder that you hand your scopes to somebody that can actually go proactively identify problems and then solve them. So the whole thing is becoming a problem solver, not necessarily an automation consultant. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand. They think that, AI and automation is about the AI and the automation. It's not. It's like any other business model where you focus on delivering results for clients and solving problems that they suffer from. A couple other things, regular performance review meetings and updates. So I just scheduled, updates every 24 to 48 hours. I gave them a window which they could reach me in at 12 p.m. till 2 p.m. PT 5 days a week. So that just eliminated a lot of needless back and forth, especially at late hours of the night. Then it just, constantly allowed me to claim my wins. I also focused on clear, jargon-free reporting. I mean, what do clients care about? In my case, I was selling primarily cold email systems. I'm selling primarily things that revolve around growth. So it tends to be leads, it tends to be deals closed, it tends to be revenue, it tends to be, number of records moving through a CRM. They don't care about 23.4% efficiency improvements in the sector alpha. Nobody gives a crap about that, okay? What they care about is ultimately how much money they're making, how much money they're saving, and then how much chaos or organizational improvements that you can provide. All right. And then lastly, I started doing monthly strategy sessions to identify new automation opportunities. I didn't ask them about this. I just started doing them. I started providing monthly roadmaps where I see opportunities that they're not focusing on. And then I proactively deliver, a big step-by-step breakdown of what I would do if I were in their shoes. So if you guys want an actual practical example of that, I have something, I think it's a 15 or a 20-page roadmap proposal that I delivered to a client that I later closed them for $10,000 a month plus 7% revenue share. I think that's month 3 or month 4 in Maker School. But that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. I write extraordinarily detailed assessments of where the client's at and what I would do if I were in their shoes. And then I just give it to them and say, hey, if you want somebody to implement this, if you like it, if you vibe with this, I'm more than happy to do so. Just wanted to point that out because if I were in your shoes, I would want somebody to do that to me. Okay, so you're positioning yourself as a partner, not necessarily just a builder. Here's a quick SOP for that. You identify the client's ongoing needs. What are needs? Needs are typically revenue. They're typically savings, like a profit, or there's some sort of chaos, burnout, subjective amount of work, quality of life, that sort of thing. Then you design your solution as a service, or you design your service as a solution, I should say. Set up your initial automation system, implement some sort of monthly reporting. Now I say dashboard here just because dashboard's a pretty fun buzzword. You don't have to do a dashboard. You could literally have like a simple Google Doc that you fill in on the last day of every month and then hand to them. You could do it in like a Slack message. You just need some sort of consistent way to do this. Then provide ongoing maintenance and optimization, okay? Deliver consistent monthly results as long as you're delivering some sort of, again, revenue, savings, or reduced chaos, then basically every month you can come back to that client. You could say, hey, here's some other things I've found. I want to do this for you. And, here's some cool thing that I've already done for you. And they'll pay you more for it. Okay. So take the long-term view here, not the short-term view. The short-term view is I need to be paid for every little tiny thing that I do. The long-term view is, hey, if I consistently deliver value, I'm going to make myself indispensable to this person and their team. I can make way more money than if I don't. The third major thing I found out about was what I'm now calling the ROI formula, which is where you price based off of value, not effort. I touched on this earlier, but yeah, clients don't really care about how much time I spent building automations. They only really care about the results I deliver and the ROI that they receive. So what I mean is, if I spent 100 hours on an automation, or if I duplicated a template and then spent 3 hours, to the client, it looks the same, right? I mean, this box, again, I keep bringing this up because I think this is just a brilliant example. This box is the same to the client, regardless of whether it took 100 hours to build or it took, 5 hours to build. So, I mean, if the box looks the same to the client, then why don't I focus on doing it in 5 hours and not 100 hours, right? Now, the traditional agency model focuses a lot on tracking hours. The hourly billing model is sort of just baked into people's understanding of agencies. Most people are like, oh, you should never bill hourly. Hourly's stupid. I'm actually kind of against that. Like, you should do whatever is the lowest friction way to get your first few dollars in your bank account with your business. And you should worry about everything else after that. But that said, obviously, after you do get your first few dollars in a business, you should focus on, more scalable and higher leverage ways to do so. And so that's where you move away from tracking hours and billing. And the reason why that's bad is because it's sort of like misaligned incentives, okay? Like your incentive is to do one thing, and then the client's incentive is to do the exact opposite. If you think about it, like usually charging people per hour means that you're incentivized to work more. So work more hours and deliver fewer results. And the client is sort of, their incentive is for you to work fewer hours. So what I mean is like, this is like, 100% fundamentally opposed, right? So instead of billing hours, after you've done your first couple of gigs or whatever, you've got some confidence in the business model. What you do is you do what's called the ROI formula, which is basically how much value am I delivering? Value, again, is revenue, it's savings, or it's something a little more subjective like reduction in founder chaos. And what you do is you figure out estimated how much money you can make them. So if I make them, 10K in revenue, you could charge them about 30% of that. So I can now charge them about $3,000 for that, okay? If I save them 10K, you can usually charge about 5K, about 50% of that. Revenue is a little further away from profit. Savings is obviously, synonymous with profit. And because ultimately the only thing that a business owner cares about is their bottom line, you can typically charge more for guaranteeing savings just because there are fewer steps needed to get to the value that they're seeing. And then, chaos is a little bit more subjective, but you can definitely tack chaos on your ability to reduce it onto the price that you're charging. Ultimately, by focusing on return on investment as opposed to hourly billing, I was able to target much higher value clients. And they also had significantly larger business problems. And then instead of having to compete on price for smaller things, like a lot of the time you see on gig platforms like Upwork or Fiverr or Malt or whatever, I was able to still acquire some clients from those platforms. Not saying those platforms are bad or anything, but then change it from like the typical hourly model where maybe I could make $500 off a client to a value-based one where I deeply understood their problems. I consulted with them on solutions. Then I pitched my solution as basically being an all-inclusive, all-in-one package that dealt with everything, and then charged them $5,000 for the same thing instead. Okay, so here's some premium positioning tactics. That's basically what I was talking about a second. The first is document their metrics before implementation and then after implementation. What do I mean by before and after implementation? I mean, you actually ask them. So you do like a consultative call, and on the call, you say, so how many sales are you doing this month? What sort of revenue are you driving this month? What sort of like expenses are you doing this month? This may seem like kind of a lot to ask somebody on a sales call. And, of course, some social acuity is required here. But if you are going to be somebody's like operator, if you're going to be somebody's, chief automation person or fractional ops person, like you're going to have to know this stuff anyway. You might as well get it out of the way now. And obviously you could hedge things in uncertainty and you can do estimates and whatnot, but literally get it out of the way. I like to say stuff like, so how many sales did you make last month? Oh, okay, that makes sense. I take your average order value is probably somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000. Oh no, it's $2,500. Okay, so you made what, like 5 times 2,500? My math ain't so good. What's that, like 15K, something like that? Oh, 12.5. All right. Cool. So 12.5K in revenue. Are you taking most of that money home, or what are we looking at? What I'm trying to say is, you see the vibe there. The vibe isn't I am saying, hey, here's a spreadsheet that I created with all of your numbers. No, the vibe was, hey, can you run me through your business? I have some experience in similar businesses. Here's some estimates. Oh, those estimates are a little bit wrong. Gotcha. What do the actual numbers look like? Okay, sweet. I have the client more or less agree to everything that I'm saying, and I have them. Usually it's almost like Inception, if you guys have ever seen that movie, where the whole idea is you don't actually tell somebody something, you get them to come to the conclusion on their own. So sales, I don't know, pretend you're Leonardo DiCaprio. The point I'm making is focus on the financial impact rather than the technical specifications. And when you do your case studies, remember the example that I performed above where I said, I saved $10,000 a month for a B2B manufacturing company using an automated CRM. Okay. Show the financial impact first rather than the technical specs. That's what they care about. Additionally, offer performance guarantees. Nobody really talks about this, or if they do, they usually talk about guarantees negatively. But like, let's say you offer a guarantee and you say, hey, I guarantee you, I'm going to book you 20 qualified appointments in the next 60 days, or you don't pay. Okay. What actually happens if you're good at your job? You're only going to be in that position where you don't generate 20 qualified appointments in 60 days, like 10% of the time. Okay. So what does this actually mean? Well, this means that you lose 10% of your bottom line or your business. Okay. Do you have any idea how much of your top line having a guarantee increases? You could increase your top line by 300% by having a guarantee. Just in terms of CVR alone, the number of people that are saying yes to you, let's say responding to your cold emails, booking calls with you through Upwork, saying yes to you on communities or LinkedIn or anything like that. Do you know what this means mathematically? This means if you have a guarantee, it means that you are making 270%. Then if you don't guarantee, you make the normal 100%. That's a 2.7x difference. So if you want to like very quickly and easily just about 3x your business, offer a performance guarantee that demonstrates confidence in results. Obviously, you need to bake this in some uncertainty. Like you need to be good at what you're offering, right? So if this is the very first time you've done something, offering a performance guarantee may have a higher potential downside than 10%. But I also think about it this way. If you offer a guarantee, if there are two universes, in one universe you offer a guarantee, and in another universe you don't offer a guarantee, in which universe do you think you're more likely to actually do the thing that you guarantee the client, right? Do the freaking thing. Obviously, the one where you offer the guarantee, because if you don't deliver the guarantee, you don't get paid. So your incentives are aligned. You are essentially committing to this thing. You're going all in on this thing. And that's the sort of thing that you need to do if you're a beginner in any business model. You need to commit to it. You need to kind of get ahead of it. All right. And then lastly, and this is sort of a hack, big thing that made a difference for me was just presenting multiple pricing tiers. Like I always used to just present one pricing tier. I'd say, hey, it's X upfront. And then it's, I don't know, Y per month. And then it's, I don't know, like Z per lead or something. This is specifically for cold email. Obviously, every thing that you're selling can have a different pricing scheme. Okay. This is what I used to do. I used to just do this once. And then I'd say, all right, that's the price. Oh, you say no to it? Okay. Well, I guess I'll just go screw myself. Well, actually, what's better is you change it. So offer multiple deals or multiple pricing packages, because this changes the number of potential options that the client has from 2 to 3. Okay. Like for instance, right now, this is the client. And if you just give them one price, they could either say yes to you or they could say no to you, right? And they're going to say yes to you some percentage of the time. They're going to say no to you some percentage of the time. There's two options, okay? In this universe, we have multiple pricing tiers. They could say yes to one. Then they could also say yes to 2, or they could say no. Do you guys see how much smaller this no camp is getting just proportionally? Now, obviously, this is an oversimplification, but typically, if you have more pricing tiers, you have more pricing options, the total proportion of the time they say no to you is lower than if you have just one. So here's a quick and easy SOP. As per usual, identify some business metrics to improve for the client. Calculate their costs, calculate their revenue, calculate their losses, and then estimate the value of improvement through your system. Be very conservative here. Don't be hopeful with these numbers. Be conservative because you want the client to believe these more than you. Then price at 10 to 20% of the annual value that you're driving. Now, this is annual, okay? So this is specifically for an annual plan. I think if you're doing monthly, probably do something like 30%. And well, it's actually 30 to 50%. But I know a lot of people are closing bigger 6 or 12 month deals here. And then present to some sort of ROI based investment. Hey, you pay me X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be delivering 3 X, Y, Z. Guarantee minimum performance. I will guarantee you at least 2 X, Y, Z in the next 90 days or you don't pay. Or, I'm going to continue working for free until I do. Or I'll buy you a taco and then, send you a Rolex, right? There's a million and one ways to do this sort of thing. If you guys are interested in what like really good guarantees look like, look at the $100 million offers book by Alex Hormozi. And then finally, you actually deliver and document results. And you just take the wins every time you can. Okay. The next big thing is the client psychology strategy. Essentially, the big thing that made me more successful, I think, than the vast majority of other automation agencies that started around the same time was I understood client psychology. I mean, I did go to school for psychology, which helps. So I did behavioral neuroscience specifically, which was kind of neat. And I wouldn't consider that to have been super valuable, but it did at least get me in the mindset of somebody that thinks about thinking, which I think is really important. So yeah, this is really the crucial element that tied everything else together. Like a business will make decisions initially based off emotional factors first, and then they'll justify them with logic afterwards. So I got in the habit of recording my calls. After I recorded several hundred calls, identified the primary emotional drivers were fear of falling behind competitors, frustration with inefficient processes, desire to focus on higher value work. There were obviously some tangentials like, business owner to business owner, spending more time with like your significant other or your family, not tearing your hair out, feeling like you're producing impact or driving change, right? These are a few of many, but I'd say these are probably the biggest ones. And obviously like financial dissatisfaction. Yeah, I just noticed that like most of the time when I failed, I was literally just focusing on the technology's capabilities. I was spending, if this is my call here, okay, I would spend 60% of the time talking about the solution. The successful calls that I had, I would spend maybe 20% of the time talking about the solution. On the unsuccessful calls, I spend like 60% of the time talking about the solution. Do you know what I spent the other like 80% of the time talking about the successful calls? The problems, the fears, the worries, the inadequacies. Like, it sucks to say, because this is such a negative and poor way of framing this. But guys, like, we are in the business of making money, essentially. So if you want to be successful and effective at making money, these are ultimately things that you focus on. You focus on positioning your solution, not in the context of the technology, the cool things that it does, but on the problems, the fears, the worries, and the inadequacies that that solution solves. So what you do is you validate the pain, amplify the cost of inaction, present the solution as inevitable anyway, and then demonstrate a bunch of proven results, and then remove risk through guarantees. This is sort of like, I don't know if you want to call it like an SOP. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to address objections. To be clear, I don't actually really like addressing these objections on a call. What I like to do is I like to inoculate against these by just having the client buy into everything that I'm talking about. So anytime there's an objection about value, like, I'm not really sure about this, that usually points out to me that I didn't demonstrate the ROI and I didn't get the client to believe in the ROI. So this is something that you guys can co-opt as well. If it's a question of like social proof or whatever, hey, can I talk to a testimonial? That's what I've been into trust objections. So that's usually where you need some more authority, you need some more social proof, or you might just have something weird. When somebody Googles your name, maybe there's a Reddit post saying like, oh, this person sucks. I know this person did a poor job. That actually happened to somebody in my community, which kind of blows. Like if there are some concerns around implementation, and there will be, but it'll be like a tenth of the actual concern. Hello, bird landing on my balcony. Nice to see you. You need a clearer process explanation. You don't need a more complex process explanation. If anything, you need to like simplify it or make it dumber. A lot of the time if somebody is saying, hey, I don't really believe that this specific technological solution will do X, Y, and Z because of some other competing standard, it's usually because there's some deeper decision-making fear, and you probably failed at one of these, not the actual like technical part, okay? All right, let's wrap up this puppy with an SOP on how to deal with client psychology. The first is identify the emotional and logical pain points. Really cool thing is most clients will have the exact same ones, just rebranded, and this is the same across industries as well. Then quantify the current process costs through a conversation like we talk about. Amplify the cost of an action. Present your solution as inevitable anyway. Then show proof of similar results you've delivered to other people, and then remove risk through guarantees. So you're going to close the deal based off of the emotional relief you provide, and then because of this guarantee, you know what else you're going to do? You're going to make it logical, so they'll be able to justify it. And then when you do that, this is what we call no-brainer solutions in the hood. The hood being AI and automation agency. You want to make it a no-brainer by both satisfying their emotional needs and then also speaking to their logical ones. All right, hopefully you guys appreciated this video. If you like this sort of stuff and want to learn some real sales tactics, check out Maker School. We have a live sales workshop that happens every 2 weeks where sales professionals come into our community and then actually do like live role play in small groups that target specific objections like this, walk you through how to crush sales calls and more. I also give you a 90-day guarantee that if you come in my community and then you implement all the steps that I give you, you will land your first paying client or your money back. There's also a big day-by-day accountability roadmap, as well as a number of templates and resources and a thriving community of almost 3,000 people. Aside from that, please like, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff, and I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks so much for helping me hit 100,000 subscribers. Really, really looking forward to continuing to produce high-quality stuff for you. Cheers.